Fora TV. The world is thinking.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Mead. I'm one of the owners here at Politics and Prose. First, I assured Christopher Hitchens that I had checked everybody's ID at the door. They're highbrows, they have a high tolerance of outrage, and they also have a very good sense of humor. So we have a... And credit cards too. So we have a good audience here tonight. We need to have a good audience because our author tonight was named by Foreign Policy magazine near the head of their list of the 100 top public intellectuals in the world. The London Observer has named him as one of the most brilliant journalists of our time. It's a lot to live up to this evening, Christopher. Christopher Hitchens has been a long-time contributor to Vanity Fair, The Nation, Slate, Times Literary Supplement, The Spectator, The Atlantic Monthly, and it could go on and on like that. But you know, I really shouldn't even have to introduce him. I thought I could just pass out copies of Michael Kingsley's over-the-top front-page review in the New York Times coming up this Sunday. Right there, In God Distrust. It's a it's a wonderful review. It's what I can't really put it this way. It's what every author prays for. Michael Kingsley writes in the review, Hitchens is the bohemian and the swell, the dashing foreign correspondent, the painstaking literary critic, and the intellectual engagé. I will say this, that Michael Kingsley takes Christopher Hitchens to task for being a little bit too quick to resort to French in search of le mot juste. But Michael Kingsley, you might point out to him, Christopher, is guilty of a little bit of the same thing in this review. Michael Kingsley goes on to say that Christopher Hitchens charms Washington hostesses, but will set off a stink pot if the opportunity presents itself. Now, I'm a little bit ambivalent about whether I want to offer that opportunity this evening. Christopher Hitchens' self-described hope in this book is that this book will become part of the long overdue fight back against superstition, sexual repression, political fanaticism, and all the other ways in which the faith-based have chosen to present themselves. And as Kingsley ends his review, he says, God should be flattered. Unlike most of those clamoring for his attention, Hitchens treats him like an adult. One final word on his recent 58th birthday in April. Christopher Hitchens became an American citizen. So we all want to wish you happy birthday and welcome to America.
Give us a kiss. An impossibly handsome and generous introduction, for which many thanks. My fellow Americans. I've waited a long time to say that. It was the 13th of April last, indeed, Mr. Jefferson's birthday and mine. And I took my oath at his memorial on the tidal basin, and I swore particularly to renounce one foreign prince among all the ones I was sworn to abjure, the slobbering Dauphin Prince Charles, who, because of when his mother's demise should occur, God should forbid it, but when it does occur, will become not just the head of the state, in my country of birth, but the head of the armed forces and the head of the church, and can't stay married. and can't seem to tell a nice girl from a nasty one, and says that he wants to become a Muslim. This is what you get when you found a church on the family values of Henry VIII. I sometimes think that you, my fellow Americans who came by this naturally, didn't have the strain of going through Homeland Security before putting up your hand, don't know how lucky you are. But it's at least given me a new slogan, to which I invite your attention. When I took my oath to the man who wrote and wanted it among the few things mentioned on his obelisk, the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, which becomes the basis of our very precious First Amendment, it occurred to me to say, in honor of his most famous defense of that position, Mr. Jefferson, build up this wall. Well, I'm not going to... Of course, it's slightly depressing to see how many lugubrious atheists are here with nothing better to do on an evening so full of the bounties of God and the benizens that he showered on you. So I won't detain you long. I think one can make the case that my book makes under a couple of brief headings, which I will do, and then I'll be your prisoner and I'll be the hostage of any questioner. Religion itself begins in the infancy, the fearful, cringing, excremental infancy. Infancy is charming in infants, not very charming in grown-ups, of our species. Religion begins at a time when people don't know there's a germ theory of disease. They don't know that the Earth revolves around the sun. In fact, they believe the contrary. They don't know whether the Earth is round or flat. They don't know when they're told they're given dominion over all species. In Genesis, not just that the passage doesn't mention any marsupials, because the writers don't know of the existence of Australia, doesn't mention any microorganisms over which, alas, we still don't have dominion. It comes from this primitive, base, cringing, fearful period. But our minds, fortunately, are still patterned to look for argument and for explanation. And even a conspiracy theory is better than no theory at all, and religion is essentially the conspiracy theory of the origin of the cosmos and of species. But as Heinrich Heine so beautifully put it, in the period before his books were burned and his reputation besmirched, in times of extreme darkness, where you don't know the road, even a local who is blind and deaf may be a good guide. But when the dawn breaks, you can bid adieu to this guide, however decent he was to you when it was dark. So that the religious have everything still ahead of them. They've never been able to prove the existence of God. Their cleverest theologians have broken their chops on the question. And that's fine, we wouldn't expect them to. But they want to go a step further. They want to say not just that there is such an entity, but that they know his mind. And they know who, and they're able to interpret for you and tell you what to do on this basis. He knows, and they can tell you, what you may eat, with whom you may have, this is a family values store, I know, Congress. What books it might be advisable to read, what other practices might be avoided otherwise. This is an impossible solipsism, an impossible arrogance and self-centeredness, and it comes, this authoritarianism, in an awfully masochistic guise, which should put you off it to begin with. It says, bear in mind that you are only dust, as the Christian book says, or you are only fashioned from a clot of blood, as the Quran says. Bear in mind that you were convicted and found guilty before you were conceived of crimes in which you couldn't have possibly been involved, and you have all the burden of proof in your own defense, and you've been found guilty. But to make up for that rather horrible indictment, you can be reassured that the entire cosmos is designed with you in mind. False consolation, and that he has a plan for you on condition that you agree to be a serf forever. I'm one of the very few people, I know I'm the only writer, who's been to all three axis of evil countries in the years elapsing since 2001. I've been to Iran and to Iraq and North Korea, and I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul and freeze thy young blood. cause thy several hairs to stand on end like quills upon the fretful porpentine. But the article that I wrote that was most praised was from North Korea. I got a lot of praise for it. It's reprinted a lot. And I mention it because it's the article of which I'm most ashamed. Whenever I'm praised, I cringe, I clutch, because